after you serve your 5 years as president, your time is over. There is a provision that says that under martial law, elections shall not be held. That is true, but it doesn't mean that the president's term is prolonged. His term runs out, and his authority is passed down to the Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament, including his authority as the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. Donald asked me if it's possible to have such a meeting, and I said that it is. After all, if Zelenskyy is ready, he can come to Moscow. This is quite possible. You often speak about the root causes of the Ukrainian conflict, when Ukraine was dragged into NATO, and now we see that European leaders speculating about security guarantees for Ukraine are almost exclusively concentrating on deploying their troops in Ukraine. And many of them are still insisting on Ukraine's accession to the European Union. But we see that the European Union, that used to be an economic association, is now turning into a military political bloc with their constant aggressive statements and decisions. How can you comment on this situation? I concur with those who say that every country has the right to choose how to ensure its security, and it's true for every country, including Ukraine. But it also means that no country can ensure its security at the expense of another country, such as Russia. We always opposed the idea of Ukraine becoming member of the North Atlantic Alliance, but we never doubted its right to engage in its economic activities in any way it likes, and that includes EU membership. The question is, Russia and the United States are discussing peaceful settlements, and the formula of security guarantees in exchange of territories is being peddled around. Now, what is meant, and by that, who should be the guarantor, who should be taking part in elaborating these guarantees? And is there any meaning in meeting Zelenskyy right now? Can any agreements be reached at such a meeting? Now, what was the first part of your question? Well, there is a speculation right now that there is a formula of security that proposes exchanging security for territories. No, this was never discussed in such a form. Security guarantees is a natural thing, and we have always assumed that every country must have security guarantees and a security system, and that includes Ukraine. But no territory exchange is assumed here. And we're not fighting for territories, we're fighting for the rights of people who live in the territories, for their rights to speak their own language, to practice their culture and traditions that were passed down by their previous generations. So that is what we're talking about, first of all. And if those people choose through democratic electoral procedures, through referendums, to be part of the Russian Federation, we must respect this decision. That is democracy. It's something that those who are forgetting that should remember. Now, the first articles of the UN Charter also directly mention the right of the people's self-determination, but we have never linked security guarantees to territories. Now, one can say these are related topics, but we never discussed that in a package, and this was not the way it was discussed in Anchorage. As to potential meetings with Mr. Zelenskyy, now, I already said that I've never ruled out such a meeting, but whether this can be meaningful, in accordance with Ukrainian constitution, now there may be different opinions about this, but you can just go and read the actual text of the constitution. There is no way to extend a president's term. There is no tool in the constitution to do that. After you serve your 5 years as president, your time is over. There is a provision that says that under martial law, elections shall not be held. That is true, But it doesn't mean that the president's term is prolonged. His term runs out, and his authority is passed down to the Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament, including his authority as the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. So what should the current government do if they want to be legitimate and take part in the settlement process? They should hold a referendum in accordance with the Ukrainian constitution. Any kind of territorial issues are resolved through referendums, as far as I remember. But you cannot have a referendum under martial law. That is also enshrined in the Constitution. In order to hold a referendum, you should lift martial law. But as soon as you lift martial law, you'll need to have elections. And this process can be dragged out forever. The outcome of the elections is unclear, but whatever result you have, you will have to obtain an opinion of the Constitutional Court, according to the law. And if you want to have an opinion of the Constitutional Court, the procedure is, if the Constitutional Court is requested to prolong the authority of the President and the Constitutional Court refuses to do that, what can you do? Now, the thing they did in Ukraine, the security guards declined to allow the judge of the Constitutional Court to access his workplace. That is how they did it. And I don't know where he is currently located, but I know that there was a time when he left the country. And recently, the term of service of some of the Constitutional Court judges ran out, so there is no quorum. And if we meet with the current head of administration, let's put it this way, it is possible, I never rule this out, if the meeting is well prepared and if it leads to a positive potential outcome, it is possible. And by the way, Donald asked me if it's possible to have such a meeting, and I said that it is. Now, after all, if Zelenskyy is ready, he can come to Moscow. This is quite possible.
Do you believe that multipolar world about which you have been speaking during the famous Munich speech back in 2007, and you Poles of this multipolar world are probably Russia, India, China. So has this multipolar world been established, or there is still something to aspire for? And a couple of hours ago, German Chancellor Merz called you probably the biggest war criminal of our times. What do you think about this? It happened a couple of hours ago, literally. As for if the multipolar world has been established or not, well, its outlines are there by and large, but I wouldn't really speak about any domineering pose. It doesn't mean that this new multipolar world should have any hegemons, because no one is speaking about this, not in BRICS, not in the SCO. Everyone has equal rights in this multipolar world. And from international law point of view, everyone must have equal rights, must be in the similar position. Yes, there are economic giants like India or China, and actually our country is among top 4 biggest economies if we speak about the purchasing power parity. These are the current realities. That's not something that we would like to have. That's what international organizations calculate, but it doesn't mean that anyone should dominate over the politics or over global security. So we do not believe that there should be some domination. Everyone must be equal. As for the statements that you've just mentioned, because Mr. Peskov has mentioned this just literally 10 minutes ago. So what do I think about this? I think that it's a bad attempt to lift the responsibility for the tragedy that is happening in Ukraine now. What do I mean? I would like to remind you, and I have already said this on many occasions, back in 2014, ministers of 3 European countries traveled to Kiev and signed a document that was basically an agreement between the sitting president, then President Yanukovych, and the opposition. And in accordance with that agreement, all the disputes, all the political disputes were supposed to be resolved in the constitutional field by peaceful means, by legal means. And then literally on the next day, a coup d'etat took place, a bloody coup d'etat, a violent coup d'etat took place. And no one lifted a finger to bring the situation back to the constitutional field. Those events in Crimea happened right after that. The Kiev regime started hostilities with the use of armored vehicles, with the use of airplanes against those territories of Ukraine who did not agree with the outcomes of the coup d'etat. And after that, they dismantled and they undermined all our attempts to resolve the situation via peaceful means, and they refused to implement the Minsk Accords. So then who is to blame for this tragedy? Those who ignored the interests of Russia in the field of security? If someone thinks that you can ignore the people of our country in such a way, they must remember that Russia will never just watch by idly what's happening next to its border and not react to anything. This will never happen.